welcome back to the RevRx podcast. My name is Chad Potts, and I'm your host. Today's episode is a very near and dear one to my heart. As many of you know, I work very closely with veterans. They have a soft spot in my heart. They are truly our nation's heroes. And today, in our interview, I sit down with retired Sergeant Eric Donoho. He is a U.S. veteran. He is an author. He is an advocate for veterans everywhere. And he's a suicide survivor. You heard that right. He's going to share with us his story. He's going to share with us how the things that our U.S. military sees and experiences overseas, it changes them. Many times they come back different than how they went. And you've heard of PTSD, but Eric is onto something a little bit different, what he describes as moral injury. And he's going to share what that's teaching us about our veterans, how to take care of those veterans that are close to you, and how to gain perspective into their point of view, into their lives, into their mindset in order to help them live their best life. So if you're a veteran out there, or if you love a veteran, this episode is for you. I want you to meet my new friend, Eric Donoho. Let's dig in. Eric, brother, thank you so much for joining us today on the show, man. What a privilege it is to have you here. And let me start off by saying thank you for your service, brother.
Well, I really appreciate you having me and opening your platform up to this message. It's an honor to be able to talk to you and all your listeners and people who follow your message.
Well, man, I relate to a lot of what you're doing in a lot of different ways. We talked about that before we jumped on here live. And man, there's just a deep appreciation for the message that you have that you're putting out there. And I can't wait to get into that. But before we do, I'd love for you just to introduce yourself to my audience, help us to get to know you a little bit better. Tell us your story and kind of what led you to where you are today.
Sure. So in an effort to be short and concise and quick with this, my name's Eric Donoho. I'm a retired sergeant from the U.S. Army. I got retired in 2009, put on the TDRL list, temporary retirement list in 2009, and that became official, I believe, in 2011, 2012, for getting blown up one too many times during my employment to Iraq. So really the journey for me started when I was 26. I was working in sales and marketing, and I just didn't really feel very fulfilled. And we were in the middle of a war, and there were a number of things that had happened and for me in life around that time frame. And I decided that if I didn't join them, it would be too late at some other point down the line. So at 26, I joined the military, infantry, went on to airborne school, and then got assigned up to what was at the time the new brigade, 4th Brigade, 25th Infantry Division in Alaska. And then more specifically, I was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 509th headquarters unit, and was a part of their scout sniper team.
Awesome. Now, combat veteran,
yes,
Purple Heart recipient, right?
Yep.
And author.
Yes.
And
yeah.
We
That's
don't see a lot
one.
of that.
I'm still getting used to that title.
That's a new thing. I love how you share your military experiences in a way that's really helping men and women today to, number one, become their best self. But then number two, you're an advocate. You're an advocate for veterans and their families. And I'd love for you to talk a little bit about your role as an advocate and kind of how that shaped you and how that's evolved over the years since you've gotten involved with that several years ago.
So in 2008 was when I first put my feet in the whole advocacy thing for veterans. It was pushing for the post 9/11 GI Bill, and I was still actively in the military, but I was going around having people sign the petition on base to let our elected leaders know that, it's not just veterans who support this. It's active duty. It's the whole gamut of people.
Right.
And because of a whole lot of amazing work from people in DC and veterans in DC, that got passed. And then over the years, I volunteered off and on. And then in 2018, I became more of a regular fixture in DC, coming in every quarter, at least on a minimum, to communicate what's going on in the veteran world to our elected leaders and things in areas where we can do better.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I found interesting with that and rewarding at the same time was that while I am in a fortunate place to be able to do that, not everyone is.
Yeah.
And not everyone feels comfortable enough to walk into a sitting senator's office or a congressperson's office and say what you're doing is wrong and is hurting people.
Yeah.
And I don't have a problem speaking truth to power. Like, that's never been an issue for me.
Yeah.
And so it just kind of fit, like, you know, being a voice for things that make sense and that are reasonable and that were a part of our contract.
Right.
Because that's the other thing, right? You're not going to see me on the Hill advocating for new things that were not a part of my contract. Now, others may, right? But that's not me.
Gotcha.
It's just, you know, I believe in holding them to that piece of paper. And so a lot of everything that I've been a part of has been about holding them to that, culminating. So I did some work with the Elizabeth Dole bill that just got passed.
Yeah.
But my biggest bill that I'm the most proud of, or the two bills that I'm the most proud of, are the very first one that I helped work when I started, which was the 988 Suicide Hotline Act, and then the PACT Act, for which I was invited to the White House for the bill signing. And those things were, you know, amazing opportunities to learn and grow. But it also opened, you know, the curtains on how the sausage is made. And right. that's, you know, that's a hard thing to try to figure out. How do you navigate now when you know?
Yep. Well, and your voice is important and your voice matters. And being an advocate for others who may not be able to use their voice in the same way is a really is a privilege, I'm sure. And so I appreciate the work you're doing.
I honestly, I feel honored that people share their stories with me. I feel honored when people reach out on social media. I mean, I kind of keep most accounts low key. I'm not on most accounts. So if you really want to connect with me, find me on Instagram, but reach out to me. If you've got something going on, reach out. If my knowledge can help someone connect to another person, or, you know, maybe it's an organization, hey, reach out to this person, or it could just be, hey, I don't know, give me a few weeks, maybe I can help, maybe I can't, but I won't forget about you. And then just recognize that there are a lot of those messages that are coming through on a daily basis. Right. So please be patient, because I do try to get through them all. And I spend more time on some because of what they're sending me than I do on others, because it can be like, hey, I can connect you to somebody who can take care of this for you. And then there are other times where I'm like, I have no idea. This is so unique. Like, I don't know.
Well, and you know, it's important to have a place to go. And so I want to encourage any veterans out there with any issues that you're having. If you want your voice to be heard, Eric's a good resource for you. And so reach out to him. I'll put his link in the show notes as well.
Well, and remember, there's a lot going on right now with all kinds of lawyers who are willing to represent veterans clear across the board. My only advice to that is just make sure your eyes are completely open and that you understand what they're coming for, which is your money. And that there are services out there that are good and just as aggressive that will come for far less money or free. So make sure you're doing your due diligence.
It breaks my heart to see people taking advantage of people like this. But that's the world we live in, I guess.
It's a lot, disability, VA disability and compensation is a lot of money. And that is another group of people who are trying to turn it into $1 billion a year business.
Yeah. Well, we talked before, I've got a soft spot in my heart for veterans. And one of the things that I see in my setting and that you've seen a lot of, unfortunately, is veteran suicide. You were instrumental in getting the suicide hotline established. And I'd love to kind of go there a minute, because that's not something that I think we talk about enough. But when veterans come back to civilian duty, something is different. There is something that's not whole a lot of times, and it can lead them down a very dark path. And I see that, you see that, but can you speak to that a minute?
I can. So let me start by just a little housekeeping. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't call myself instrumental in the 988 suicide hotline. Yeah. With everything that's going on in the veteran community, I try to always make sure that I'm authentic and honest as much as possible. And even I get like frustrated like at myself, because I know how easy it is sometimes to misspeak, right? So like I'll say, you'll hear me say 18 months or 14 months for my deployment. And the 18 months is how long my brigade was there, and the 14 months was how long I was there. And sometimes you can use those interchangeably as an individual, right? And it's not. Now, that isn't the case for what I'm talking about in this situation. But I just want to be clear. Like I always try to keep myself.
Little disclaimer. Yeah.
Yeah. I always try to keep myself humble and recognize that I'm just a spoke in a larger wheel of thousands of other advocates who are doing the same thing as me.
Yeah. Appreciate that transparency.
With the 988 Suicide Hotline Act, and why that was important to me was I'm a survivor of suicide myself, and I've lost more than 19 friends to suicide. I stopped counting after 19. 19 was my best friend, Brent, who actually was the one who pulled me back from the edge and kept me from attempting again.
Wow.
And so the fact that I wasn't able to be there for him, is something I still carry today. But in all of this, what I realized is a few years back, I got thyroid cancer related to burn pits. And it was in that moment that you kind of look and you're like, all right, if I were to go, what would be my legacy here? And I looked around and, I've got this amazing daughter. I've got this amazing son who are going to, I believe, go off and do just amazing things. Like I believe and know in my heart that God has big things planned for them, and the way that they attack life, it's just hard to not see that.
Yeah.
But I also thought, like, okay, if that's my only legacy, then all this information I have inside about what I've learned since that suicide attempt just goes away. And so that was one of the whole purposes for this book. And then when I decided to write this book, the reason that I kept it authentic and raw and real is because I wanted both my kids and the people out there to be able to believe it, right? And then on the same time have a roadmap and be like, well, hey, I do some of that same stuff too. This is what he did. Maybe this will work for me. Maybe, I don't know if it will or not, but it did for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so all of this comes back to what I learned was moral injury, which is what you were trying to get to. And it took me a long time to get to.
No, that's great. Yeah. Set the scene a little bit. So,
but that's the core of what is driving veteran suicide. And that's not just me who says that. That is a study out of the New Jersey VA. When you look at veterans as groups, the group who are suffering from moral injury are at the highest risk level for actually pulling the trigger on suicide.
Wow.
And so when I learned that information and I started to dig into that information, I thought, well, what have we done in the last 10 years to effectively help moral injury to get this information out there to the veteran community and to the, larger military community and first responder for that matter.
Yeah.
And so as I started to look at all of this, it became very clear that we in the last 10 years have spent $0 on moral injury. And they, out of 1,100 new programs created to combat veteran suicide, both at the DOD and VA, 0 of them focus on moral injury. And
that's a big deal. Yeah.
That's a huge deal. And then immediately, I'm like, this can't be right. So during my book launch week, last September, for Suicide Awareness Week, I headed out to DC, and that was what I talked to lawmakers about.
Awesome.
And the reality that I heard from every single one of them, and it was more questions than it was me directing it to them. Is anyone talking to you about this? Are any of the major VSOs on the Hill communicating this to you? Has this information that's come out from the New Jersey VA been something you've seen? No. Over and over, I think I met with a total of 35 to 40 offices in 2 days.
Wow.
And it was a consistent, this is not something we've heard about. This is not something we've talked about.
Yeah.
And so, taking all of that into consideration, then I started to reach out to the VSOs, organizations that I've worked well with and have connections at. And I started to get pushback on from there. So if you go to any of the major VSOs and you type in moral injury into their search engine, you might get a page that has like a list of articles where that topic has come up, but you don't have the only organization. DAV is the only organization that has a dedicated page to moral injury. And even on that page, they try to make it more sterile and clinical, where you try to remove the spiritual and soulful aspect of what moral injury actually is.
Yeah.
And so why this all matters, I know I'm on a long tangent.
No, this is good.
Why this all matters is because moral injury manifests the same symptoms that PTSD does.
Yeah.
Except moral injury will not get better with traditional PTSD treatments. So for me, I had been in PTSD treatment since I had come home in 2008 and all the way to when I attempted my own suicide in December of 2015. And the part of what got me there was that I wasn't making any progress at all. And even though I was trying, even though I was showing up and doing the work. So that's really why moral injury is so important, because as soon as I started focusing on moral injury, that's when things started to change. That's when I started to see a light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. And so, you're diagnosed with this disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, and you're treated according to the most recent guidelines, and nothing happens. Nothing gets better. And I imagine that being a pretty hopeless situation. Think of it with any other disease state, right?
Right.
Think about if you have diabetes and it's out of control and you start taking insulin and it's not working and you're spiraling. You can't deal long with that.
Well,
and much less something that affects every part of your body like that.
Right. Well, and you'll hear veterans and organizations talk about, we're here to give you tools to put in your toolbox so that when things come up, you're able to use them. Right. And so I had a whole shed full of brand new tools that I had gained over all of those years going to PTSD treatment. And every time I try to institute and work those tools, they didn't work. And it wasn't that I didn't have PTSD, because most of the time these two injuries run concurrent.
Yeah.
And so it wasn't that I didn't have it. It wasn't, and it wasn't that those tools that they gave me wouldn't work for PTSD. It was that the biggest injury for me that I needed to deal with first was that moral injury? Was that injury to my soul and my spirit? Because that was what gave me the ability to then catch the pause and between the stimuli and the response, and then to allow me to utilize all of those tools with regards to the issues that I have with PTS. So, it's a sequel thing. Yeah.
Yeah. That's why I'm drawn to the work you're doing, because I'm a big proponent of mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual well-being is all interconnected. There's a tendency to make PTSD treatment about only the physical. Moral injury speaks more than just to the physical. And man, I resonate with that. So can you break this down for us, so that for those of us that may not be aware of the differences between moral injury and PTSD, or really what moral injury is, can you break that down for us and help us to understand that a little bit better?
I've got a great book out. It's a companion guide that goes along with my book. It's about moral injury, and I actually break it down here. And it says, moral injury and PTSD are often mentioned in the same breath, but they are not the same wound. While both carry deep scars, their roots and pathways to healing differ. PTSD is a clinical condition, a response to trauma where fear overwhelms the mind and body, often leaving a person trapped in a cycle of anxiety, flashbacks, and hypervigilance. It's about survival in the face of overwhelming threat. Moral injury, on the other hand, is a wound of the soul. It can come from what we did, what we failed to do, or what was done to us. Experiences that violated our deepest sense of right and wrong. It's the silent weight of guilt, the quiet ache of shame, the haunting questions that replay when the world is still. PTS speaks in fear. Moral injury whispers, "You're the problem. Everyone would be better off without you. You don't deserve peace. You're unworthy." That's the difference between PTSD and moral injury.
Yeah. And that's really important to understand. So for the veterans out there, if you're dealing with some of these things, Eric has done a fantastic job of breaking that down. For those who love veterans and you have loved ones who may be struggling in this way, I think that's a really helpful way to break that down.
Well, and it's not just veterans, real quick, right?
Okay. That was one of my questions I was going to leave with. Yeah.
So you're a pharmacist, right? I'm going to throw this out there. You're in the medical field. Mm-hmm. You're dealing with people in a very real way. And in that, you're dealing with life or death. And accidents and traumas happen, and people pass on, and you may find yourself in a situation where you're now carrying the weight of a moral injury.
Yes.
Healthcare professionals, first responders, police, fire, ambulance, paramedic, pastors. I mean, you're doubly screwed because you're a pastor and a
appreciate
pharmacist.
That, Eric.
But what I'm getting at is
you're gonna see it a lot of places.
Just veterans. And while I don't have the data, I do think that this is a larger systemic problem that all of us in America are facing, and is what allows that division and for people to create that division within our society.
Yeah, 100%. And, I just spoke with somebody this week, and it was a healthcare provider, and they had a patient pass away. And they were dealing with, what could I have done differently? What did I do something that could, or did I not do something? And a lot of what you just said speaks to that. Yeah. What did I do? What did I not do? What could I have done? That's that guilt. That's that shame. That's that moral injury. And so when you unpack that just now, a light bulb came on them, and I'm like, this is not just a veterans thing. It's not just a military thing. It's you're onto something that I think is a very common human condition.
It is, and it's something that we've sterilized from society over decades and decades, right? We all know that we have a spiritual core to our son. That people people chase it through, I mean, maybe not through God like me or you, but people chase that spiritual core through meditation, through yoga, through other religions. I mean,
Sure.
there's, to break it down, DOD, most likely to affiliate if you have some sort of spiritual connection, right? So just in the DOD, 71% of the military identifies as some sort of religious connection. That's not even including the people who say, hey, I do yoga because it recenters me. I do meditation, so you're talking in the 80% range of population, but we've taken this conversation about the soul and the spirit out of things because you can't talk about God. And it's not really about God. I mean, that is where I believe I'm getting this message from, and I believe he is calling me to do.
Sure.
But this genuineness of healing, this idea that you want to go live a good life requires faith in something.
Oh yeah, and you're
if
speaking my language.
And if you don't have faith in something, right, it doesn't have to be my faith. Like, I'm not here to, I believe God has given me my message, and I'm putting it out there, and what happens from that happens. I'm not the guy who can sit here and quote all these different Bible quotes or scripture. And even if I could, I'd probably get some of it messed up because of all the brain injuries, and then that would cause problems. And so, just very specifically with regards to this, because it's so personal to me, and because I saw the healing that happened in my own life, I know that this is real. And so if I can put this out there, and even if it just helps a fraction of the people, and we can start to bring down the suicide numbers from veterans, that can start proving the larger point for society. And maybe if we can start getting it out in the first responder community, specifically police, firefighters, ambulance, paramedics, they bear the biggest burdens when it comes to these situations. Most people vilify cops, but I have never met a cop who has been like, they carry that stuff. Yeah. They may act tough on the outside, but inside it's eating them up. Because everyone I've met who's gotten into law enforcement gets into law enforcement to help. Yeah. Not to hurt. And
that's a big problem in our society. And that's, there's a lot I could say there. I'm different conversation for a different day, maybe.
Yes.
But this is critical, because you're right. You can say you don't want to talk about God. You can say you don't want to talk about spirituality. You don't want to talk about the soul. That doesn't change the fact that there is a component of spirituality in every one of us.
Yes.
And so if you want to be whole, and if you want to be healed, it's going to take focus on that area. And let me ask you this. So when we're shifting, you've laid out for us very clearly the difference between PTSD and moral injury, and they can happen concurrently, same time. Where does the treatment shift? So what are some techniques, what are some healing practices that you have found that helps with that voice that tells you, you know what, the world's better off without you? What have you found through your journey, and what are you coaching and teaching that really centers on the soul?
Service. Service and faith, if you don't have faith, you don't have hope. You don't have life. And what I tell guys, like when all of this started for me and I was at my lowest and I started moving forward, I was pretty angry with God still at a number of things that had happened in my life.
Right.
And so I wasn't ready to put my faith in God. He and I were, while we had our Lieutenant Dan moment, which is in my book, he and I were still, like, from my perspective, I'm like, all right, I'm willing to listen, but I don't know. We're going to have to see on this. And so where I put my faith was in my wife's faith, because I knew and believe and trust in her. And so for me, that was where I put it. And what I tell guys all the time is it doesn't matter if it's in God to begin with, or if it's in a piece of property that brings you peace when you're there. What matters is that you start to find it, and then you start to cultivate what that faith means. And the only way you can cultivate what that faith means and looks like is when you start serving somebody other than yourself.
Wow.
And that's what healed me. That's what helped me find my path. And none of the things that I've done, like my best friend taking his own life, and I knew that I was spiraling. I knew that I had failed him, or at least felt that way inside. If he can't make it, how am I going to make it? And then I had a friend, a mentor's voice running through my head, Eric Wymayer's. He's like, Eric, when you have all this adversity facing you, all these negative ripples in your own pond going on, you take that energy, all that negative energy, and you do something good for someone else. Wow. And it will calm the storm, and it will reframe those ripples and the damage they've done. And so I leaned into that, and I took 8 wheelchairs to Nepal. I had no idea about wheelchairs. I had no plan. I had to raise $11,000 in like 10 days. Like, it was just an insane amount of work, and I had no idea how to make it happen. But I had faith that God was calling me on this path, and that for some unknown reason, I just needed to keep walking it. Yeah. And those initial 8 wheelchairs ended up, and bringing in a wheelchair fitter and a wheelchair engineer, ended up creating a wheelchair repair center in Nepal. And what went from 8 wheelchairs is now well over 1,000.
Wow.
I don't have anything to do with it except cheerline it from the side. That was the whole point. Wasn't me. It was to give a hand up to someone else, to celebrate somebody else. And now with the Wheelchair Foundation here in America, that's their go-to place in Nepal. And so that's one of them. I leaned into, advocacy work on the Hill. Leaning into the weight we carry, which is what I read from the book, and this new series that's going out nationwide. And by the way, if any of your listeners want to hold or host a moral injury workshop, connect with me. They're free to host. You just have to provide the space, and you have to have a guest list. Otherwise, I'll show up for free to talk about this in your hometown. Just reach out to me.
Eric and I are going to try to get something together here where I am. And
yes, absolutely. I'm digging it because it's Georgia. We need to fit it into Georgia. I don't have Georgia yet, so yes, I'm all about it.
Love it, man. You're an inspiration, and there's a message here for all of us. And there's something to service. There's something to making life about more than ourselves. All right. And so serving others, and then serving God, finding that higher power. And I love what you said, Eric, about how you weren't ready to put your faith in God. So instead you put your faith in your wife's faith. I talk to men a lot, and a lot of men come to faith that way. Yeah. You have your questions, you have your doubts, you're not ready to make that decision yet, but you know what? You've got that person that's been walking it out in front of you, and you can put faith in their faith. And granted, what we're not saying here is that someone else's faith can save you. That's, we understand that. But someone else's faith can light that fire and can be that bridge to get you to where you're ready to put your faith in the one who can save you.
She was the fertilizer that cultivated the seeds that God planted in me all those years ago.
I love that.
That's the truth.
And so I want to make this message out there for those faithful spouses, faithful family members, and maybe your spouse or your son or your daughter, they're not walking in the faith that you want them to, or that that they need to. Keep being that lighthouse. Keep being that light that shows them the way. And people like Eric have stories to tell of how that changed their life tremendously. But Eric, man, you are putting out a message that I think is much needed, not just for the military community, but largely. That's where your context is. And so that's the people that you're reaching. I'm convinced that whatever we're delivered from, we're then supposed to go out and help deliver others from the same thing. And you're doing just that, and you're making a big difference. And I can't wait to work with you on a closer, more personal level here in my state. But, man, can you tell our listeners where to find out more information about you, about your book, about your foundation, and about how to reach out to you if they want to host one of these events where they are?
Yeah. So real quick, it's not a foundation from the standpoint that I am a social for-profit entity, meaning the profits that come in, roll back in to go out and help. I'm consistently trying to figure out how to uplift. And in the veteran space, we have over 48,000 veteran nonprofits nationwide. I don't think we need another one. We just need somebody who's actually willing to toe that line and to put their mouth where their money is. And that's where I try to do this. So all of this is typically funded through the sales of my book and through consulting and speaking engagements and things along those lines. Yeah. So, you can reach me at ericdonoho.com and you can find all about me there. You can connect with me there. I also want to encourage everyone to follow me at Instagram. That's EB Donoho, EBDONOHO. I try to keep it lighthearted and fun. I talk a lot about moral injury, but I also throw up a lot of humor too. So, please give me a follow there. And, I look forward to working with Chad, about coming down to Georgia.
Man, it's going to be fun. Yeah. You guys check him out. Check out his book. You're doing great things in the world, brother. Keep being great. I'm so glad that you had somebody who came alongside you and showed you the path forward. And now you're repaying that to lots of other people too. The world needs your voice, brother. And I'm so glad that you're using it in a way that brings others help. So thanks, Eric, brother. Bless you. Look forward to talking to you soon.
Bless you too. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the RevRx podcast. We hope you enjoyed what you heard today. And if so, we'd love it if you would hit that subscribe button so that you'll never miss a new episode from us. Also, feel free to leave us reviews and comments as we'd love to hear from you. Be blessed and be the very best you.